Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Afternoons with the Ambassador. And of course, I am your host, the Ambassador. And today we are going to resume our discussion of the Babylon 5 television series. And today I have got with me my good friend, Adega Outlaw. And we're going to be going through season 1, episode 2, Soul Hunter. So we will not stand on ceremony. We will go ahead and jump right in. And Adega, if you want to do a quick plug of your channel, or if you just want to jump into the discussion, we can do that too.
Let's just jump right in. People could figure out my channel if they want to.
That's fine.
Like I was telling the ambassador before we started, for me, this is one, I don't know why, but it sticks in my mind more than any other. And I think it sets a hint or a more of a picture of that the Babylon 5 universe is a lot more vast than just the station, and that there's a lot more creatures, ideologies, different belief systems, because I think they get into 3 separate different belief systems in this episode, and how well that people know one each other or distrust each other. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, because you have the belief system of the Soul Hunters, obviously. You have the belief system of the Minbari, and then of course you've got Franklin's position on the whole idea of these guys can't really be stealing people's souls before they die. He's very much the skeptic in this episode, which I can respect and everything because he is a man of science to a point. He does later on in the series disclose that he is what they call a foundationalist. So, but yeah, the whole idea of do people have souls in the Babylon 5 universe, or is there nothing after we die, is honestly an intriguing idea. And what you have with this particular episode, we'll do a little bit of a discussion about the episode itself. You have a Soul Hunter's ship and everything drift that comes through the jump gate there onto Babylon 5, and they bring the ship on board, and of course they find the Soul Hunter in there, and he's beaten up. He's in kind of bad shape because his ship has been attacked. We don't know by who per se, and he finally comes to, and the interesting thing about the Soul Hunters is they can actually sense when people are about to die. And he can almost read the quality or the aspects of a person's soul, which honestly I think is kind of a neat idea. Adega, your thoughts?
Before we get... just one side note, and it was only for the first 4 minutes of the episode. Last time we talked, I mentioned how amazing of a pilot Sinclair was and his experience. And when this ship came through, it was a damaged ship that came into their local space. It was free floating in towards the station, and he went to go get it personally. He was the one person who could do it. Instead of blowing it up, he decided to go out there, catch it, and salvage it. And of course he did. Now, getting into the idea about them sensing the quality of souls, that is quite interesting, because I think in most people's beliefs, most people, I should say, souls really don't have an unequal value. They may have unequal experiences, and they may make bad choices, but for most people, all souls seem to be equal. Well, in the minds of the Soul Hunters, they are attracted to the ones that are most extraordinary. What did he say? The dreamers, the blessed lunatics. I can't remember everything. All the ones that do the fantastic things. And when he throws in the blessed lunatics, it's like their idea of the worth of a soul is very unusual.
I would agree wholeheartedly. And we get into a little bit of the backstory of the whole impetus for the beginning of the Earth Minbari War. because it's hinted at a little bit, but it's not spoken of directly. And the Soul Hunter talks about Dukat, the head of the Minbari Great Council. And what I found very intriguing is the fact that he seemed very frustrated with the Minbari because they don't allow the Soul Hunters to come in and take their souls, where it seems like other races are somewhat more accepting of allowing the Soul Hunters to collect their souls. And it begs you to wonder, did that particular Soul Hunter or have any Soul Hunters ever been able to capture or retrieve a Vorlon soul? Because in essence, a Vorlon is practically nothing but soul in a manner of speaking. But this idea that they put these souls into this, they use this apparatus to put their soul and everything into this little crystalline globe or whatever, and keep it, and they'll speak to it periodically, is actually somewhat interesting. So, and of course, the Soul Hunter, unfortunately, this particular Soul Hunter, played by C. Morgan Shepherd, has gone mad because he has missed too many important souls and everything, and he's starting to take lives. He's starting to be more proactive rather than reactive, and he is starting to take people's lives and collect their souls that way.
Right. And you'll find out when you watch the movie that the Soul Hunters aren't exactly without flaws, and this guy demonstrates it. Now, when you said that some races accept them, maybe I missed something. You know, I've seen it a few times, but I always thought that no one likes Soul Hunters. That's why they were all trying to flee the station when he showed up.
Yeah.
The only ones who were able to put up a reasonable resistance that we know of were the Minbari. And they talked about them throwing countless lives to stop him, to prevent him from going in and taking Dukat's soul.
Yeah.
And that says a couple of things about them. One, yeah, they could sense who the really valuable people are, and they will stop at next to nothing to get what they're after. And two, they must be extremely powerful for a single or small group of these Soul Hunters to go after someone when they have to have an entire wall of bodies of Minbari fighting to prevent them from getting through. So they're not only psychic, but they have extreme capabilities, both in tech and what have you.
Well, yeah, you could almost make the argument that the Soul Hunters might be an offshoot or might be a lesser known race from the first ones, because they are so technologically advanced, because they're even more advanced than the Minbari, and the Minbari are above even the Centauri and the Narn, and obviously above humans, most definitely. So because as far as I know and everything, you bring up a good point, because most of the alien races there on the station were wanting to get the hell away from that Soul Hunter, and then you have the other Soul Hunter that shows up later in the episode trying to rein the other one in, and he is like, my brother has gone mad, and he's trying to rectify the situation and bring him back to the fold, or end him, in a manner of speaking. So,
you know, I kind of get the impression that they may not have been as old as the older races, but that they had a significant amount of influence from the shadows. The shadow technology specifically is based on using other life to manipulate machines, to run computers, those type of things. And these people have such high technology, and the shadows were free with it for those who would be subservient, and their beliefs is based on using other people's lives to make their whisper galleries and their little collections of people that they could talk to. To me, it seems like it was a race that these shadows found and said, "Ooh, this is a very convenient match. We can use these people."
Yeah. And I could see where the shadows would have allowed a race like this, because the shadows were all about, well, as you and I both know, they were very much about sowing disorder and discord and trying to see which race is the best and anything, which to elevate and which to let die. And I think them allowing this race or anything, the soul hunters, access to their technology, or at least encourage them along this path of, like, yeah, go out there and collect people's souls or anything, collect the valuable ones, for the simple fact that the shadows may themselves have wanted to have access to these souls or anything, so that they can learn from those minds.
Right.
Because if you get the soul, you get the knowledge that that soul retains or anything in death. So, but you get the other thing about this episode is you get another hint about the situation between Sinclair and the Minbari, because the Soul Hunter says very specifically they're using you. And Sinclair's like, what the hell do you mean what they're using me? Who is? And you're like, okay, what's going on here between Sinclair and the Minbari?
Yeah, there's also more, what can I say, foreshadowing of exactly who.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually pretty much tell you that Delenn is a bigwig. She's part of their ruling body, and she's pretending to be an ambassador, is pretty much is what the Soul Hunter said. And then because his thing where he says, you would do such a thing? And it doesn't say what they would do, but he knows that the Minbari are up to something pretty fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's during the process where he's starting to take Delenn's soul, and he's able to peer into that orb and everything that her soul's being transferred into, or will be. And he makes the comment, you would do such a thing. And you've got that idea of, okay, so, because he uses the Minbari term Satai, which is for the ruling council and everything, the Great Council and everything. Each member has that title of Satai. Anything I would imagine even Dukat did, even though he was the head of the council. But the other interesting thing about this is it does bring into question this whole concept of belief systems in the Babylon 5 universe. And the Minbari believe very strongly that everybody has a soul. And in fact, it goes further than that and everything. Eventually, and I think it's later on in season 2 or season 3 that Lanier divulges the fact that human and Minbari souls were starting to interlink, or
end of season 2.
Is it end of season 2?
Very last episode, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And Jesse's here.
Hey, sorry. What time did you start? Did you start at 1 or 1:30?
You're all good.
Yeah,
you're on Central Time, I think.
Yeah, I'm on Central Time and everything. We started at 12. It's okay. You're not that late. So we're talking about the episode called Soul Hunter.
Yes, that was such a. I'll just say this here. That was kind of a twist. Like, I didn't see that coming in a very early episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because what me and Daga were just getting into was this whole idea of every race has a different perspective on the whole idea. Do different races have a soul? Excuse me, have a soul and everything. And the thing I was bringing up was the Minbari idea of, yeah, everybody does have a soul, but the other aspect is that they believe that souls are kind of have an elasticity to them. Because later on, anything, it's at the end of season 2. Lanier divulges the fact that during the Earth Minbari War, humans were being born with Minbari souls, and Minbari were being born with human souls.
And that comes to a head later.
Yeah, very much so. With the whole divulsion of who Sinclair really is and whose soul he inhabits his body.
Well, it also shows that the Minbari were wrong in a lot of things. You know, they say that the souls are recycled, but simply because of Sinclair showing up in their past, it screwed up their whole belief system. They understood things wrong. Instead of these being individual souls, they thought they were recycled. And that was how they explained the time dimensional shift, or the time travel, because they didn't know what had happened. They didn't know where this guy came from, and how human influence subtly got into Minbari. They assumed it was their souls were swapping, instead of realizing that now they have part genetic components in a third of their society, all based off of human DNA.
And then they lied to their people.
Right.
No, I'm bringing that one up there because I remember an episode. It's much, much later when that Warrior Council guy gets up there and he's like, I didn't know whether to laugh or weep when I learned the truth. And I'm like, you know, up until that point, it had never come up that we had maybe I was just too young to think. I never actually asked why they split the war. You would think their own people would do it. And now 20 years military later, I'd be like, if we just surrendered on the verge of victory, I'd be like, what the heck?
Yeah.
And they didn't tell their own people. So I think that's a subtle point we need to remember. They never were told why. I think it was only the Great Council who knew the truth.
Right.
Yeah, it was only the Great Council that knew the full truth and anything about the nature of the relationship between humans and Minbari. And the Minbari's one greatest law, their main law, is Minbari do not kill Minbari.
And Minbari do not lie. And there was a whole episode that's coming up where it was Londo, and someone had said about Minbari not lying. He says, what do you mean they don't lie? Of course they lie. And that's when they had, I mean, it's a whole nother story, but generally people assume that the Minbari don't lie, and the Minbari justify it by saying, well, we're trying to save face of a clan or a group or,
with Lanier. Billy was fantastic in that. I loved reading. I loved his behind the scenes. No, he almost didn't take the job.
Right.
Really? That I don't think that.
Oh yeah, there's an interview, Ambassador. He was talking, and you know he was on Lost in Space and everything, right?
Oh yeah, I knew that.
Okay, yeah, I assumed you knew that, but I just, you know, I never want to. I figured you might, but you know, I never want to assume anything. So I was watching an interview on YouTube with Billy Mooney, and he talked about how he was offered this role, and he had made a point of saying he didn't need the money. His father had done, I think the way he said it is, during his acting career as a young actor, his father had done very well taking care of his money. So he didn't actually need the money. He said he was doing just fine. And he came in and he was wrong. I was like, well, how long am I going to be in prosthetics? Because he's like, he understood this. And they said, oh, an hour or two. And he thought, oh, okay, an hour or two. And he was there like 4 hours. And he said the woman who was supposed to originally play one of Shakar's species. Now I'm drawing a blank on the name.
Natoff.
Yeah, she was crying and and just couldn't take it. And he did the pilot, and then he came back and said, well, okay, I need to know something. How long, or he did whatever he did, and he said, how long do you need me for? He goes, because if it's every day, I can't do this 4 hours a day, and I don't need to. So they said, some days we'll need you for a little bit, some days we'll need you for a little bit more, and some days we may need you for a lot. So it was kind of a negotiating, the way he put it. And he said they got really good. Of course, like, you know, over time, they start knowing how to put everything on. So, of course, it ends up happening faster.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
But it was a very interesting interview. Sorry, I know I kind of hijacked. I just kind of want to point that out.
No. That's, hey, I'm here to learn more and share what I know about Babylon 5. So anything that's brought up in the conversation's fine. And to kind of pivot off of that point, the design, the makeup of the Soul Hunters is actually, it's rather simplistic, but at the same time, it's also very mysterious because. And I don't know if they deliberately borrowed this from Marvel or not, but do either one of you, are you familiar with the character of Adam Warlock?
Yes, I am familiar with Adam Warlock. I was an Adam Warlock and the Infinity Watch guy. I actually, back when that came out after the Infinity War and Infinity War, Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity War, I actually was one of those people who was buying all of the Adam Warlock and the Infinity Watch comic until it, of course, was discontinued. I don't think it lasted very long, but you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
Adam Warlock gave a stone to individual people who want the power to be, too much power. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, the impression I get from the design of the Soul Hunters is I think they were a little bit inspired by Adam Warlock's design, because if you remember, I think it's true of every Soul Hunter, that stone or whatever it is in their forehead. And for Adam Warlock, the soul that was in his forehead was the Soul Stone. And I found that rather intriguing and everything with the Soul Hunters and everything, because me and Adega have already brought this up, but I don't mind revisiting it with you, Jess. They seem to have an ability to sense the quality or the ability of a soul. What do you think about that?
And that was the whole point supposed to be of this episode was, and you got to remember, you started with did you start with in the beginning? You started with the prequel, right? Okay, so you know where I'm going. You almost certain know where I'm about to go with this. His whole thing was he was supposed to be the guy who was supposed to get Jakar's and he failed. And now he's trying to make up by not waiting until the date, because their rule is supposed to be they're supposed to wait until the death happens. Now he's going ahead of the death, so now he's breaking their rules.
Yeah.
But you only understand that, I think, if you watch, the series. Otherwise, it's kind of like it's more of an intriguing mystery. But when you put the whole gambit together and the whole story, it makes total sense now.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think? I'm sorry. How do you say your name?
Adega.
Adega. Okay.
No, that's pretty much what we had discussed. I mean, you brought in a couple other elements, but we never. Well, at least I wasn't part of it, where we actually did the. In the beginning, we did the pilot, but we didn't do the movie. So
I think I had done the movie solo.
Okay, maybe that's what it was.
Yeah, I think I had done that.
I'm sure I saw your video, which I thought was great.
I try.
Yes, I'm going to throw a plug out there. If you haven't seen his in the beginning reviews, I'm telling you, the Ambassador, he owns his name. For anybody in the chat who eventually listens, dude's got his understanding down.
I try. I try to be as informed and as up to speed and up to snuff as I can be. But
what I think is interesting is, and I'm just going to throw this out there, and then I'm gonna mute real quick because I got to use the right because I got to take care of something real quick. One of the nice things about a show like this is it was a show that many of us haven't seen in a lot of years, but it's like we still remember so much of that show. And nowadays, if you watch a lot of shows now, there's so many. What do they call them? The one-offs. I want to call them the throwaway episodes. They're so into this whole cinema thing that they gotta fill in. Hey, we're gonna do a whole story for 22 episodes, so we're gonna throw in a few fillers here and there. At least Babylon 5, for the most part. Probably a few one-offs, but for the most part, those side stories really added to the layers. Like, I can't wait till you get to it eventually. The one, but it's way late in season 7 or 6 or 7. I'm not going to talk about it, but it's a really good episode because it's from the point of view of
Oh,
Extra. Yes.
Yeah, you're talking about season 5, I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking. But it was really great. One of the things I loved also, and then I wanted to throw this out there the last time, was the amount of beautiful respect for different religions and the way to make different religions. And the guy who created the show is an atheist. He could have easily have gone, I hate religion. I'm not going to discuss it. But I remember reading somewhere where he said, yeah, I'm an atheist, but religion is a part of not American culture. He said
the world
human culture, so it would not be unrealistic that other species would have their own religious culture. And I think he said something along the lines of, it'd be very ignorant of him not to bring that up. And he did a great job with religion. I mean, I don't dog people for being atheists, even though I'm a Christian, but I got to give him mad respect for being respectful, especially with what's going on nowadays, where it's like they want to, I think you get where I'm going there.
Yeah, right. No, he even gave a religion to the Vorlon, even though it was only mentioned once.
Oh, that Vorlon guy. Yeah, I remember that. That was a nice throwaway line. I thought that was like,
I can't remember which. Nice throwaway.
Oh yeah, the I just need a bucket. And
he said I need a bucket.
Yep, put a bucket on my head and we can run around and act like the Vorlon god Buju.
Yes,
yeah, that was Marcus.
What he did? She was like, they don't like the Vorlons, so I'm gonna. She basically pulled out.
She trolled.
Let's be honest. She pulled the dick card.
Oh yeah.
Well,
she pulled pretty much the dick card.
She trolled that one. I think it was it was the Walkers of Sigma 957. She pretty much trolled them. And Marcus is like, are you sure this is wise? Because they could pretty much eliminate us and just like, poof, gone. But Ivanova totally went there.
But it was great. I mean, that's one of the things that made, and I know it's a little off topic. I'm sorry. But
no, it's okay.
She was one of the best characters of the show, hands down.
Yeah, she was. Very much so. Yeah. And I did a whole video on Ivanova. I think it was like 20 minutes long.
I loved it.
Oh, okay.
You really did good there. I hands down, it's the only one I've seen so far. But I saw it and I was like, you got it. You understood that character.
Like I said, I tried. So that's all I can do. But getting back into the episode, with the Minbari, Sinclair has an interesting perspective on them because he says they're very honorable people. They don't generally act duplicitously, but as we find out later, they can be just as duplicitous as anyone else or anything. And particularly in this instance, you see Delenn act in a way that isn't normal for Minbari. She becomes unhinged. And she's talking in Minbari and nobody understands what she's saying or anything when she says he is shock taught. And everybody's like, what the hell does that mean? And she has to, when they finally get her calmed down, she explained they're called soul hunters. And obviously, the Minbari have not had the best relations, as you mentioned, Adega, none of the races have really had the best relations with the Soul Hunters because they all believe that the Soul Hunters are, I don't want to say evil, but they are perceived as evil. I wouldn't necessarily even ascribe the acronym or the descriptor as evil for the Soul Hunters. They simply exist.
Well, you can imagine being any race or any species, whether they be primitive or even advanced, where the only time you see these guys is when death comes around. And so when people would see them, the whole association is there is loss coming. And there is going to be nightmares for people. They are going to tell stories to children. It is going to be the cautionary tale. Avoid the soul hunters at all costs.
Yeah. As opposed to what could have come, which could have been embrace the soul hunter. There could have been species that could have been, and we never saw it, but there's no guarantee that not there weren't certain species out there that actually embraced the soul hunter. That would be, I mean, think about it this way. Look at it this way. The whole point was they didn't collect every soul. They only collected what they felt were important. So this could have been, and it was never explored, but it could have been, and it could still be a possibility. There's a possibility that just because those region of people thought, okay, soul hunters are bad, this could have been. Did anybody ever see that movie Soul Eater? It had the guy
Heath
who played
Ledger.
the Joker. Yeah,
Heath Ledger.
It had him in it, right?
It's called.
Where
It was actually the movie's actually called. The movie's actually called The Order, but one of the roles and everything, or one of the organizations is called
The Order.
Yeah, I know. I know what movie you're talking about. It's one of my favorite movies and everything. Heath Ledger, regardless. It's a good film and it has a good concept to it. But yeah, you were saying, Jess, go ahead.
I was saying what could have been a possibility, and I never even thought about it until I was just talking about it, was what if there were, I mean, if these people couldn't have been afraid by everybody. There had to be people who thought of these people as like saviors. You know, like if there had to be, if they had been doing this for as long as they claimed, there had to be cultures out there who saw when this person came to take the soul of another, they would have considered it an honor. So I just don't believe that every religion and every race hated them. I just think that that's what we saw. But I got to believe that there's no way a species like that could exist and do what they do if there weren't some protections and some, especially because otherwise you would think some other race would have wiped them out, because they didn't seem like they had much in the way of
military.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm throwing that out there, saying that I don't believe that they were all considered bad. I was comparing it to the Sin Eater with the very beginning of the movie, where the man is working on the church and he's about to die, and the person's asking for the priest to come, and he's like, "Oh, he's been excommunicated, so he can't go to heaven, but he's good enough to build your church." And he gives money to this kid, or he tells this kid to get the Sin Eater. And that's the basis of the story. And I was like, now I haven't seen the movie in a long time, but I'm telling you what, that is how you start a freaking movie when you really want to get your point across.
Yeah. Well, and the other, because you bring up an interesting point, and I think, and you had brought this up previously. It is very likely that the reason that the soul hunters were so technologically advanced is because they had access to shadow technology, because the shadows were fairly freewheeling and everything to a certain extent with who they allowed access to technology. And if you take a look at the shadow hunters' ships, they do seem to have kind of that shadow technology influence on them or with them.
On the Soul Hunter ship? On the Soul Hunter ship?
Well, they don't look exactly like a shadow vessel or anything, but they seem to have kind of a aesthetic feel to it. Anything like it's almost techno-organic technology, in a manner of speaking.
Maybe they were corrupted by the shadows.
I don't know if they were necessarily. I don't know if they were necessarily corrupted. But like I mentioned, and Jacob brought this up, the shadows, as you probably know, were they were what they call lords of disorder or lords of chaos or anything, whereas the Vorlons were lords of order, as some people have referred to them as, and I don't think that's an accurate descriptor. But the shadows weren't as restrictive with who they allowed to have their technology, because if you look at that one race and everything that was like servants of theirs, the Drakh were not first ones, but they had access to shadow technology, and that's because they did the bidding of the shadows. The soul hunters could have at some point had a encounter with the shadows, and the shadows saw, and then potential and everything for them to do some good on their end, or do the shadows a good turn and everything down the road. And the point I had brought up with the Dega before you came in, Jess, was the shadows were always those that wanted to learn more, and what better way to learn from others than to collect the souls of much smarter minds. And that would be the perfect conduit by which the shadows could increase their power, increase their knowledge. Because if you recall in season 4, when Sheridan goes to Zahadum and he encounters Lorien, the shadows keep Lorien around and everything because they feel like they're paying him respect or because they want to learn something else from him. Because Lorien himself is kind of free with his knowledge. He isn't very restrictive to any great extent. He does have certain limits. He won't interfere. He allows people to make up their own decisions. But he will offer advice when necessary, or he will intervene when necessary. And I think with the relationship with the shadows, and this is pure speculation, we don't have anything definitive unless Adega, you know something I don't, or anything. The shadows may have had some sort of dealings with the soul hunters in the past and allowed them access to the technology. That's why they had such advanced technology, in particular the soul collecting apparatus and everything, to retain a person's soul in those little crystalline spheres.
Well, the reason why I brought that up was simply doing the Technomage book series. You'd learn to find out that the Technomages in particular, in order for them to become a Technomage, a life must be given for their tech to be able to work with them. There's a life force involved, meaning that the shadows were able to manipulate the life energies of certain creatures in order to harvest them and put them into tech so that they could be used for creating Technomages. Well, that same type of gathering, that type of energy could very well be used to make these little orbs that the shadow or the soul hunters use. It seems just awfully similar. I mean, the way the books describe it, it's quite violent what they do, and it was almost, he was trying to say he was making it easy on Delenn, but still it was kind of a violent event, ripping someone's soul out. So to me it made sense that had to have been, or more than likely was, shadow tech that they used. Granted, the species may innately have been able to sense souls and sense death, but to put the two together, I would think there would be intervention, but that's just my thoughts.
Yeah. Well, hey, if you don't mind, Investor, hey, you think about it, it's not necessarily, we assume it could have either been Shadow or Vorlon. We always have to remember there were other first ones, so there's always a chance it could have been somebody else, or there's always a chance this was just naturally how their species evolved. Yeah, I'm pulling a Star Trek there. I know it's totally different, but
I need a couple minutes.
I'm just saying there was always a possibility of it was, possibly naturally evolution. Maybe they had it, maybe they didn't. But, the question is, you got to ask yourself, if they could sense death, you got to ask, where did they get the ability to sense death from great distances?
Yeah.
So, I in my mind, I think they had some help, and go on that.
Well, this whole idea of them being able to sense death, it almost implies a telepathic ability, although it is it's heightened. It's a heightened telepathic ability, but at the same time, it's a very narrow, very specific telepathic ability, because with most telepaths, they sense emotions, they sense thoughts, they sense a number of things. But in this particular instance, this race has evolved, or has the ability to sense when a person's going to die, and to do it to such an extent and everything. They are a very high order of telepath. So, I mean, they're even stronger in essence than Lita Alexander when she gets modified by the Vorlons. But the thing is, their telepathic ability is specifically for sensing the death of others. But it's not telepathy. It's foresight, like prognostication and everything. Like they are a precog and everything. They can sense the future or see the future in a matter of speaking. So it doesn't even necessarily lend itself to telepathy per se, although there is a degree of telepathic ability involved. This is almost like they're able to see into the future. Because
hey guys,
yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to log off. I got some things going on here, but
that's okay.
thanks
Dagan.
always, Ambassador. I'll be here every time you need it.
You're welcome, bud.
Hey,
Anytime.
Digga, it was nice to meet you. Have a good one. Take care of what you need.
You too.
All right, we'll talk to you later, bud. So, but yeah, the interesting, you bring up an interesting point because this is something I never really
Sorry,
considered.
I hope you don't mind me vaping on your show.
No, it's fine. No, it's fine. I don't care. This my streams are not for children, so you're perfectly fine, Jess. Don't worry about it. I had never really considered this before, but the soul hunters, they're almost their abilities to lean more towards not so much telepathy, but being seers or precogs, like in a Minority Report movie, because they can sense when certain events are going to happen ahead of time. And
now I wonder if Minority Report had a little bit on that show, just or a theory by it now.
Here's the thing. Throughout our history, we've had people that have had that ability to sense or see future events and everything, and they're what we call a precog, a person that can see into the future. Kind of along the same vein as.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. I have a bad habit of trying to talk, and then when somebody pauses, it's a bad habit of mine. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I like your hat. I like your Mandalorian hat, by the way. I meant to comment on that the last time.
That's okay. Thank you.
Personally, my dad actually bought me a St. Louis Cardinals cap, and unfortunately, I hate hats because I wore them for 20 years in the military, so I don't want to wear one anymore.
I can understand that. Believe me, I don't wear this all the time.
Hey, here's a crazy theory for you. Just something thrown out there. What if the soul hunters had a natural ability and one of the ancient species, and maybe one or more of the first ones, got involved and maybe influenced them, or multiple ones influenced them? That's why they went. Maybe you would think a species that could sense death might of important people, but who determines who's an important person? I mean, who determines who's an important person? We've had. I mean, I'll give you an example. Just think about here in the States. We've had 45 presidents. Okay, how many of those were really that important in the long run?
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting question. What made it was a mystery that was never answered. What drew them to that person? You would immediately think, oh, their leadership qualities, their skin. Well, okay, maybe for that guy, not Valen, sorry,
the Ducat.
Ducat. You know, I hate that they called him that. Because every time I hear the word Ducat, I want to add Gull to it.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. If you remember, well, we've talked about this previously. I'll bring it up. There are certain parallels between DS9 and Babylon 5, and that's one of them.
Yeah, there are, but it's so much different. It's not even worth the comparison anymore. It's just that one thing. That one thing has always drove me nuts. That name.
Yeah.
I'm like, you could have picked any name, and you picked the guy who was the main antagonist of all of DS9. I don't know. I don't think it was intentional. Maybe it was. I don't know Michael Skaczynski's. But it might have been. I mean, they could have been enhanced. They could have been genetically altered. They could have been influenced by the shadows. I mean, here's a crazy thought. Who's to say they weren't influenced by the Vorlons? I mean, the Vorlons are the type that were the protectors. So you would think if anybody was going to influence, keep people who are important, souls
Mhm.
alive, so you can learn from them.
Yeah. You could make the argument and everything. Obviously, this is all speculation because we don't
Exactly.
know for sure. But it's a cool rabbit hole to go down. But
It's great that you can think this way too.
it's called studying theology for the last 6 or 7 years, and philosophy and all these other things. But
I'm an IT
just
and history guy and a sci-fi buff.
so, but to kind of because we're coming up on about 45 minutes. I don't like these going super long, so I usually do them about an hour with the afternoon ones.
No problem. I'll stay here as long as you want until my wife calls me, and then I'm sorry. She takes priority, or my kids.
Obviously. But the interesting thing about this episode is it has an interesting resolution to it, because what you have end up happening is another soul hunter comes on board, and Sinclair and the rest of the command staff is practically twisting his arm, in the manner of speaking, to get him to divulge the location of the renegade or rogue soul hunter. And he's not necessarily working against Sinclair and the rest of them, because he does realize that this other soul hunter, is bringing shame and disdain to their order, because he refers to the group as an order, which is an interesting point in and of itself. Which means that they have a certain code of conduct, they have a certain credo or doctrine, maybe, that they operate under, and the other soul hunter eventually does lead them to the one that's captured Delin and everything, because he's going to take Delin's soul, because he realizes that she may eventually die, but he's in fact in error here, because as we know later on in the episode in the series, she dies of old age, more than likely.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but think about the important influence she had because she
yeah,
was alive. And if she had been killed off by the soul hunter too early, her importance would have not gotten through the fact of history. He was. I mean, you could easily say he was misguided. He
hmm
was a radical. He was desperate, and he was trying to recover from a shame
yeah, he
because
was.
he was supposed to get Ducat. Now, I mean, I've always wondered this one, and I mean,
hmm
like, why was he so upset he couldn't get to Ducat? I mean, I hate to sound
Well,
crazy, but I mean,
it
how the hell
wasn't.
is he going to get there in the middle of that battle?
Well, here's the thing: it wasn't just Ducat's soul that he had missed. It was a number of other souls that he had missed that was causing him
Oh,
to have that break and
oh,
everything.
so
Because
he was a bit of a failure, or
well,
not
not
good
so
at his job,
well. It was just
or a missed
it,
opportunity.
he was a victim of circumstances that were beyond his control, unfortunately. But it started to build with Ducat, and it just kind of escalated from there. Because if you remember, the other soul hunter that comes in to try and bring the other one back says first it was Ducat, and then X, Y, and Z, and then just so on. And it finally escalated to the point where he finally decided, well, I'm not going to wait for a person to die. I'm going to go in, take their life, try and do it as painlessly as possible, because he's trying to do this in a way that isn't painful, because one, he does have a sense of compassion, but two, he realizes that if the death is traumatic, it damages the soul.
So, also, yeah, I totally forgot about the XYZ part, but you got to remember, this guy thinks, and I think something we all need to remember, he doesn't think he's doing anything wrong. He thinks he's
No.
actually saving the soul. He
Yeah.
thinks I'm going to kill the body to save the soul. And
Yeah.
in his mind and his religion, whatever the case may be, this is more important. Now, granted, we learn very little. I wish we could have got more. Kind of like the techno mages, as your friend brought up. I'm sorry, Adigar.
Adega.
Yeah, Adigar. Yeah, he brought it up. Techno mage. I was like, man, talk about two missed opportunities we could have done more with. But
Well,
maybe they were just one-offs and not intentionally meant to be. But they were so intriguing.
Mhm. Well, they do another movie later on. It's during season 5.
Yep.
It's
And
called
it had
River of
Martin Sheen in
Souls.
it.
Yeah,
Martin.
it was called River of Souls. And I
Yeah,
think
I love that one.
that deals with the soul hunters. And then, of course, you do have the Techno Mages book series and everything that kind of expands upon the whole lore and story, the backstory of the one Techno Mage, Galen, who's in a couple of the TV movies, but also in the spinoff series Crusade as well. So
I
you
wish that
do
show
get,
could have been. I wish that show could have worked.
yeah, ditto, but it is what
That's
it
another
is.
story and another another time.
Yeah, sure. Because I'll probably, once I get to the end of B5, I'll probably do Crusade. Because I never actually watched Crusade. Now that I have it and everything, I'll get around to watching it. But
Hey, just to let you know, I look up your backstory in case, but the best I understood was it wasn't Skazinski that was the problem. It was a network trying to do what they tried to do with Babylon 5. And oh, what do you know? You got canceled after one season. Maybe you actually should listen to the people. It's like when people talk about, why listen to the fans and give them what they want? Because it's our money, our time, our life, and
yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with you, Jess. I know. Well,
but
I
it was
think
a good,
we've.
it was a very good episode. And remember
I
when
thought so
was
too.
it Ivanova said to him, I didn't know his name. I don't even know if y'all have names. And notice the guy never answered. He never said, yes, we have names or no, we don't. He just never, I don't even think he really said anything during that whole conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. I'll have to go. I just watched the episode back last week, and it's a little fuzzy, but I remember the biggest part of it. I don't think none of them divulge a name, but I would imagine they do have names. Everything that so, but yeah, I think we've pretty well covered this episode. So I think we're gonna close out here and everything. I'm just gonna do a quick. I'm gonna do a quick rundown of some things and everything, and then we'll close this down. So I want to thank everybody who tuned in today and everything. If you catch us on the replay, make sure and hit that like and share button. If this is your first time on my channel, welcome. I hope you enjoyed this or anything. Go back and make sure you watch the previous review or the last couple of reviews that we've done and everything. And I will be doing more content on my channel in the coming weeks because my work schedule has changed due to the virus outbreak and everything. So I will probably be doing a couple more streams this week. Of course, this weekend I'll be doing my main stream, the ambassadorial wing, and I might be switching. I'll post something on Twitter or I'll mention in other videos and everything. I might be switching the time on that to earlier in the day. Just depends on what I can do with the rest of my panelists and everything, how they feel about that. But the topic for this weekend, we're going to be discussing the movie career of Mel Brooks. Because, as I said earlier today on Twitter, when things are as screwy as they are right now, we all need a good laugh, and who better to give us that laugh than Mel Brooks himself? So be sure to keep.
Oh God, we are gonna have fun with that. What time? Let me know what time and everything. I'm gonna be there. I'm a huge Mel Brooks fan.
I will. Count on.
I'm a huge Mel Brooks. I love the guy. Do you know? You got to plug this. Remember, he's one of the few people who's got an Academy. He's got an Oscar, an Emmy, and a Tony. Man is a freaking genius of comedy.
He is. He truly is. So, anyway, folks, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching on the replay. And until next time, this is the Ambassador signing off.